Thank you. I feel so loved. Thank you. So I want to begin by taking you back to 2006. And back in 2006, one of the things that everyone was really interested in was Second Life. Do you remember Second Life? It was a virtual world where you go and build your own homes and things like that. And there were marketers back then that were saying something really interesting, that if your organization wasn't on Second Life today, you might not have an organization tomorrow. And there were some organizations that thought that was smart advice. And so they began to build stores in Second Life. Adidas is my favorite example of this. And I think the plan was this, that in this virtual world, your virtual character could go into a virtual store and buy virtual shoes for their virtual feet. Now, there's only one problem with this idea. Can anyone guess what it is? It's virtually awful. No one ever went to this store. This was about as busy as this store got. And about 6 months after the launch, they quietly took it down. And this got me thinking, how many of these online community efforts actually succeed? How many organizations that try to launch an online community actually succeed? And so I began to try and work this out. The first thing I did is that I went to the platform vendors and I asked them, excuse me, how many of your clients actually succeed in building a community? And they wouldn't tell me. I asked other organizations that were out there, and again, they wouldn't tell me. And for years, I was stuck on this. But I kept getting these notifications that Organization X has launched an online community. Organization Y has launched an online community. And then it occurred to me that you could just search for organizations that have announced that they've launched an online community. And you get a massive list of these. In fact, you get a list of 957 organizations that we found that had announced they had launched an online community. So me and an intern, who no longer speaks to me, began clicking on every single one of these links to try and find out how many of them have at least 100 actively participating members. And after a long week, we finally had our answer. Ladies and gentlemen, my esteemed fellow inbound marketers, it is my great honor to present to you today the state of our communities. Out of 957 organizations that had announced they had launched an online community, can you imagine how many were successful? Can I get a drum roll, please? Just do your thing. 5. That's not 5%, that's 5 as in I can count it on my hand, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 5 as in we're doing something really horrifically, terribly wrong 5. So what's going on here? Why are we so bad today at building online communities? Well, if you look at how the approach comes about, it's always the same. Step 1, the organization will have a big, expensive launch. You have to have a nice platform and a massive push when you begin. Step 2, they'll have a big promotional push. They'll contact people on Facebook. They'll contact people on Twitter. They'll use their mailing list. They'll push it as much as they possibly can. And then comes step 3, the plummet. They reach a point where they push it and push it and push it, and they can't promote it to any more members. There's no one else that they can reach to and tell them about this community, and then the community quickly dies. That's the high watermark of most community efforts. And the community is then taken down. In 2008, Dell launched a community called the Digital Nomad Community. Now, the idea of this is that if you have one of those cheap laptops they had, then you can go and you can work from anywhere in the world. This, I think, was one of the biggest community launches I have ever seen in my life. And this is from the patron saint of social media, Dell, at the time. And I think this launched around March 2008. And by the following November, it was dead, and it was quietly taken down. Now, if organizations like Dell sometimes make mistakes, how many successful communities can we really have? And when I began telling people about this, they always responded the same way, which is, well, I can think of a lot of successful online communities. I can think of lots of organizations that have a successful online community. But when you begin looking at these, you start to notice something really interesting. They tend to have at least one of 3 things. The first is that they have millions of angry customers. It's no surprise that some of the most successful types of online communities are those that have a lot of angry customers that need somewhere to complain and ask questions about the products and services that aren't working well. 2, they have a massive budget. Now, I know some of you don't have a big budget because we did a survey of people on your Facebook page today, or a few weeks ago. And we found that between, I think it's 40% of you have a budget of between 1 and 10,000. 35% of you ticked the box that said, budget, ha, 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 ha. That's how much budget we had to spend in our communities. Or third, they have a community that's so uniquely interesting, so engaging that it's just going to pop up around the product or service anyway. So when Google develops the self-driving car, they're going to have a crazy popular online community, simply because of how interesting it is. Which might mean that for most of us, our community efforts are doomed. That was pretty much it. I was worried about time, but actually, there's hope. Of course, there is hope. In fact, there's a group of people who are incredibly good at building online communities. There's one specific group of people who have been building communities for generations. Can anyone guess who this is? Just shout out your answer. Yes, but I actually meant the hobbyists, the crazy people that build communities around whatever unique hobby they have. These people are insanely good at building communities. They have an incredibly high success rate. So it stands to reason today that if we want to have more successful online communities, we have to stop doing the typical organization big launch approach and start copying what these successful people do. And when you start looking at that, you start noticing something really interesting. The first one is that they begin with their founding members. Notice here, we're not talking about your first members of the community. You're talking about the founders. What do you think is more motivating to get someone to join in a new community? To become a member of a community that doesn't exist yet, or to help found a community? And it's here you begin to notice the biggest split between what failures do and what successes do. And can anyone guess what that might be? What is the single thing that successful community builders do differently? Would you like a clue?
Are you sad because you're on your own? No, I get by with a little help from my friend.
That's right, they invite their friends to join the community. They don't invite strangers to join the community, they invite their friends. They don't invite people on their mailing list, on their Twitter following, they invite their friends to join the community. So I'm going to need to make sure that we all understand this because it's incredibly important. Do you think you should invite people from your Twitter following or your Facebook page to join your community to get it going? Yes or no? No? No. Do you think that you should have your random strangers, people that you don't really know, do a massive promotional push and try and invite those people to join a community? No? Or imagine if you've just discovered you have a long-lost twin brother who you've never met, and you finally summon up the courage to reach out to him. Should you invite him to join the community? Hell no. You begin a community with your friends. And we're not just talking about small organizations here. Delicious Mums, a community of, I think, 350,000 members. They have a revenue of $4 million a year. Begin with their friends. Rover.com, based here in Seattle, I think, have 40,000 new members every week. They have millions of dollars in investment. But even here, they begin with their friends. The easiest way, the best way, the most successful way to get a community off the ground is to begin with people that you know, people that are already in that sector, people that you have befriended. And this, by far, is the biggest mistake that we're making today. And we can get this right. What it means that in the beginning, we need to have a founder of that community. Not a nameless brand entity, but a clear founder of that community. And if you don't have this, if you don't have that credibility to be that founder, then the very first thing you have to do is to get that credibility. And the way we go about that is what we call the CHIP process, as in C-H-I-P. Not French fries, CHIP. So that means first, you create the right content. And I'm not talking about your personal opinions or anecdotal examples. The easiest way to get credibility amongst that group is to create content that that group actually wants to get. to things like the latest summary of what's going on in that field, data research, things like this. This will get you instant credibility amongst the audience. Or 2, host events. It's worth putting $1,000 behind the local bar and inviting everyone you know in that sector to come, because then you get an instant credibility of hosting this sort of group. Or 3, interview experts in your field. If you want the attention of every expert in your space, then interview every expert in your space. The same people that won't give you the time of day if you ask them for a favor or advice will give you over an hour of their day if you ask them for an interview. And 4th, participate. You have to participate. You have to be out there meeting members, having coffee with members, because to get a community off the ground, you don't need that many people. But you need to have that small group in place for it to happen. Otherwise, it's not going to succeed. So you want to be creating a list of 250 prospective founding members, and then have at least 50 of them that you can get to interact with each other. Now, one of the great things about this approach is that you can see if it's not working. You can see if it's not working before you've invested a lot of money into it. So if you can't get 50 people to interact with each other, then do not build a community. Either the community is not ready for you, or you're not ready for the community. But let's imagine we've done that. Let's imagine we have our 50 founding members of that community. What do we want to do next? Well, the biggest thing that's going to influence whether someone participates in a community or not is how interested they are in that topic. Now, the problem with this is that too many organizations make a community about themselves, and they quickly realize they are not Beyonce. They quickly realize they are not the kind of person or organization that people want to spend their spare time talking about them. They might have loyal customers, they might have people that visit them very often, but they don't want to spend their time talking about them. Or they make a community about their products or their services. Now, the problem here is that I don't know about you, but if I'm building a community for my clients, I don't want just my customers to be able to participate in that community. If I don't have millions of angry customers, that doesn't help me much. But I want my competitors' customers to be able to participate. I want to have anyone interested in that topic that's able to participate. I want to have anyone that has an interest or is new to that field to be able to participate in my community. Or 3, they build a community around what they think people want to do. I've been doing this around 7 or 8 years now, and I counted last week, we have been approached with this exact same idea 13 times. And the idea is this. Hey, Rich, I'm going to start a community of the top financial investors to join the community, and I'm going to charge them to exchange stock tips with one another. Now, can you imagine why this idea does not work? If you're a top financial investor today, what is the one thing in the world you don't want to share with other top financial investors? But yet, this is what happens again and again. We try and guess what members want to do. So there are 4 types of concepts that tend to work incredibly well. The first one is to build a community around a problem that members know they have. So the top financial professionals in the world might not want to exchange stock tips with each other. Think about it. If they're at the very top, then they probably think they're doing a good job of that. But maybe, just maybe, there's something else they want to talk about. Perhaps having a good work-life balance, perhaps a home design, perhaps buying great homes, whatever. But there'll be some problem that they know they have. A couple of years ago, we had a teaching software company, and they approached us because they were struggling to build a community. And they had tried a couple of things already. First, they had tried to build a community for the teachers that they're trying to reach to help each other use the software that they had developed. And you know what the teachers said? We don't have time. Then they tried to build a community around just teaching in a more general sense. And can you imagine what the teachers said? We don't have time to do this. And can you imagine what this company is missing? What do you think they're missing here? Time. So when we came along, our approach was to build a community for teachers to share their time-saving tips. Now, this is a concept that works. This is a community that today has over 1,200 members, 800 of which have logged in within the last month. So you want to build a community, possibly, around a problem that your members know they have. Second, You can build a community around an opportunity that we believe exists. So maybe in search, there's opportunities in other search engines or disruption like Rand was talking about yesterday. But this also works incredibly well if you sell a product or a service that isn't perhaps that interesting. Imagine if you sell a washing machine. No one here sells a washing machine, right? That's a shame. This would have been a terrific example for you. So it's really hard to make washing machines that interesting. This is about as good as we could possibly get. Because people aren't going to want to spend their spare time talking about washing machines. But maybe they want to talk about their housework tips or housework stories or things like that. But that's good, but surely there's a bigger opportunity here, one that takes advantage of new trends in this particular space. So if this was me, I'd build a community called for people to eliminate, automate, and delegate their housework. I think a community concept like this is going to be far more powerful, and we have to be getting these concepts right. The third one is passion. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about this, but a good example would be TechCrunch. So TechCrunch has a community for people to learn more about the startup scene, people simply to learn more about that field. The reason I don't want to spend that much time talking about it is that most organizations think their customers are way more interested in that sector than they really are. And finally, status. There's a lot of great communities out there that are based around the status of being a member. So people join because they get access to an exclusive group, or they want to be a member of an exclusive group. If I was running, say, a marketing or SEO agency today and trying to start a community, you might want to look at having a community for the top inbound marketers, or maybe a double the numbers club. And by the way, it's often a lot easier to get people to join a community if you call it something else. It's often a lot easier to get people to join a community if you call it a club or a collaborative. You can change the words to whatever you like, and each of them has different kinds of associations that people might want to join. So if you cannot get this right concept that takes off, if you can't test this first and find something that works, do not continue building a community. Okay, number 3 is the platform stage. There is nowhere where we are worse at building a community than when it comes to building a community platform. The reason why so many communities have so many lurkers today is because we build communities designed for people to lurk, designed for people to read. I want you to imagine your favorite bar, your favorite club or pub or whatever. And before you get into the room where you can chat to anyone else, you have to go through 3 separate rooms. In the first room will be someone that checks that you have the right username and the right password to get in. In the second room will be someone that tells you about the history of the bar, someone that tells you about what's going on in the bar. And in the third room will be some sort of news about the drinks that they're selling. And this is all before you can see if your friends are in that bar. As crazy as this sounds, this is exactly our approach to building community platforms today. We are terrible at building community platforms today. Now, if you want to have a more successful type of platform, we have to stop copying the examples like this, examples that might look good, examples that might impress the boss or anyone else, because you can't see where to participate in these kinds of communities. Instead, we have to look at what are the most successful, active community platforms out there today. When you think about it, like a Reddit here, it might not be the most attractive platform in the world, but look how much activity it has. It's a very ugly platform, but it works. Hacker News, look at how much activity it has and how ugly it is. And this goes on and on. There's so many examples of successful community platforms that are out there that don't look good. So perhaps looking good isn't the key to having a successful type of community platform. So maybe the rule is we don't need a platform that looks good. Maybe we need a community platform that simply shows the latest activity above the fold on the landing page of that community. And how many of you are using a Facebook page for your online community? A quick show of hands, please. I know it's after lunch. Some of you. Please stop doing that. There's nothing else. Just stop, please. The problem right now is it's like having a postman who might say, I'm only going to deliver the mail that I think your members want to get from you, unless you pay me. And honestly, the only solution at this stage is to pay for the advertising and get the email addresses of your members. Get your members out of there and somewhere else, because it's very difficult to build a community platform on Facebook. And if you are looking for options, there are other options around there at different levels. So at 0 to 4K, you have Mighty Bell, you have Vanilla Forums, you have Telescope, which will give you a community exactly like Product Hunt or Reddit or someone like that. If you have more money, say the 5 to 50K level, then it's more about backing the right horse. It's more about making sure that you have a company that is going to be successful in the long term. So Higher Logic are okay here, the 2 open source solutions, and Mobilize as well. And if you have, I don't know, if people ask me for just one suggestion, I would go with an integration of these 2. And if you have a budget of 50K, if you have lots of money, after you contact us, you should definitely reach out to maybe Lithium, Jive, Yammer, one of these types of community platforms that exist. And what you get is not something that is monumentally better than anywhere else, but you have a company that will just take care of everything. So before we continue, before you begin doing anything else, you have to make sure you have a platform that is activity focused, that will show the latest activity above the landing page, above the fold of that community. You want to make sure that when people visit your platform, the first thing they see is how crazy active it is. That is the kind of platform that we want to have. Okay, next. How do we get members to participate? Imagine how gut-wrenching it is to have a community where you have the platform, you have the founding members, but people still won't participate. This happens far too often. And it happens because what we ask members to do is usually entirely the wrong thing. So too many online communities today, for the very first contribution that a member makes, wants that member to introduce themselves. Think about this. Imagine going into a room of people that you don't know and saying, "Hello, my name is Richard Millington, and I work at this company, and I'm very, very, very excited to be here." That's what we're doing. And imagine it's not just you, but you can see a whole line of people that have done that before you and have done that after you as well. How motivating would that be to you? And how interesting is it to your members? This isn't what we want to be doing. Mistake number 2. The first thing we tell members to do is to complete their profile. Think about this. You see a community platform that you want to participate in, or actually, let's do it in real life. You see a bar that you want to join, and you try and get in there, and someone goes, "Stop." What? Profile. Seriously? Richard Millington, age, location, dun, 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 about me. I mean, who wants to fill in an about me thing? But this is what we're doing. It's no surprise that most people just give up and go to Facebook instead. And 3, we just dump members into the community. We just throw them in there and hope that somehow, some way, they find the right place to participate and they get engaged, and everyone is very happy about that. And this doesn't work well. What you have is a very small window, a 15-minute window, about the time it takes to the average person to have a shower, to hook a member into that community, to make sure that they're sharing an opinion, an experience, or something that's specific to them, something that's going to get them into that notification cycle that members have. So one way to do that is to use your confirmation email that you send out much better than we're using it today. If you look at this one here from Dell, They'll want you to join, participate, catalyze. Have you guys done much catalyzing recently? This isn't what we want to be doing. If you want to increase the number of newcomers that actually make a contribution by 15 to 20%, right now, change this message here. Say, hi, you're in. I'd love your opinion on this discussion taking place here. And just update that link every single week. We've done this in lots of communities. You can do it right now, and that would be a 15 to 20% boost. And if you can't do that, you can see what other calls to action you can do. You can see what other actions you can tell members to take. So one of them, what are your members thinking? This is a very powerful call to action. Or two, what are members doing? My favorite type of discussion in any type of professional community is what are you working on right now? And the reason that is so successful is that if I share what I'm working on and someone else shares what they're working on, I can be like, You too? No way! You can have a good collaborative opportunity. You can get people more engaged and participating simply if they know what each other are working on. 3 is what have you recently learned? Everyone has learned something recently about the topic that you're in, and you just need to give them a place to share it. Or 4, what do members need help with? Very often the biggest challenge isn't getting people to participate. It's not getting replies. It's simply getting people to ask a question in the first place. So if you cannot convert more than 50% of your newcomers into regular active members of that community, stop promoting the community. Instead, focus on converting them. Focus on testing different calls to action, different appeals, until you find out what works best. Because in almost every type of community, we can do a far, far better job here than what we're doing right now. Okay, finally, how to keep members active. According to whatever research you read, between 40 and 90% of members in online communities who make their first ever contribution will never participate again. Why is that? You don't have that in any other type of social group. So what is it about online communities where that happens? Well, one is that in an online community, if you ask a question and you don't get a response, you never participate again. The worst thing that we want is to be ignored. Second, if you ask a question and you don't get a quick response, you will never participate again. The speed of response is so important upon whether someone participates again. If you can respond to someone's first contribution within 15 minutes, they have an 87% chance of participating again. If you wait 3 hours, that drops to around 60%. So rapid contributions matter a lot. And third, imagine if you ask a question and you get the absolute drop-dead perfect result that you ever could, that you could want. Well, then you don't have to go back and participate again. Think about that. By giving a member the perfect answer to the question they're asking, why does that member have to participate again? And this happens very often. But there are ways to hook members into participating over the long term. And the first one is to show them a visible increase in skill, which means if I can see that my level of skill has increased since being a member of that community, then I am far more likely to continue participating in that community. And the way you can do that is copy what, say, the weightlifting communities do, or the weight loss, or the fitness type of communities do, where you benchmark yourself at the beginning, and then you update that benchmark, whatever that might be. So that might be in a professional community. What job did you have right at the beginning? And then you can see your career progression as a result of being in that community. And that's a very powerful reason to keep participating. Another good idea is to take whatever great advice is being shared in your community and turn it into a mini course or ebooks or guides, anything that people can see that the skill of almost everyone in that group is growing as a result of being in that community. Second is autonomy. So this means the more control, power, and influence we have over a particular group, the more likely we are going to continue participating in that group. My first ever job was doing a paper route. So that's like putting newspapers through doors. You must have a US alternative. And I thought after a couple of months, I'm doing a damn good job of this. And so I asked my boss, I would like some more money. And he said, and I remember, well, Rich, I can't give you some more money, but I can give you more responsibility. I was like, okay. So it gave me 2 routes to do. But at the time, I thought that was amazing. I had more control, more responsibility. It was such a powerful thing for me. What we want is to design a journey for newcomers, once they join that community, to give them increasing levels of control and responsibility and power within that community. That might mean when someone joins for the very first time and they post that first question and they get a response, you ask them to document that response for other people. And if they do that, you might ask them to interview other experts to do that or resolve that challenge even better. You might designate them as an expert if they do that. Or at the very high level, they might be able to run groups and columns of different parts of that community. But the increasing level of control that you give people in that community, the more, I guarantee you, the more they will continue participating. And third, social relatedness. The more we make friends in that community, the more we continue participating in that community. Which means the more I recognize the other people and the more I feel recognized by that group, the more I continue participating within that group. And that's such a powerful thing. You can have a community manager that welcomes newcomers and introduces them to other people like themselves. People with the same challenge, people in the same location. If you can find a way to automate this, even better. But if you can tackle this challenge, if you can make sure that people make genuine friendships as a result of being in your community, they will keep coming back again and again and again. And what we want to wrap things up is to design that whole journey through. So what is the first thing they need? Is an ego hit. Something that sucks them in right at the beginning, that quick, rapid response. Second, you might introduce them to somebody else. You might have a skill increase task, some sort of task that's going to increase their skill. You might give them more responsibility. And you can test this, and you can change it, and you can adapt it. You can do whatever you want to do. But this is a process that we need to get right. This is a process that we can be doing much better right now. And if we want to have members that are participating not just once, but over the long term, we absolutely have to be doing a better job of this, because there's so much potential for improvement right here. Okay, let's quickly wrap things up. When we think about how communities actually grow, it's not with a massive launch. It's not with a massive launch. What happens is they grow really steadily. They begin with the founders of that community. Then you have the friends of friends that join and participate. Then you have the early majority. It's a good curve that goes like this. And the biggest mistake that we make is that we begin here. What we see is lots of organizations that perhaps see other communities that get a lot of press attention, that have a lot of members, and think, if we're going to be successful, we need a lot of press attention and a lot of members. And they forget that you have to have a small group before you can have a big group. Please don't begin at this level. It's very risky, it's very expensive, and it doesn't succeed. What you want to do is to begin with that founder. Who is the person that's going to be creating that community? How much credibility do they actually have? And if you do that, you have a 94% success rate. If you do that, it is not very expensive. If you do that, there are safeguards in place that stop you from wasting a lot of money before that community fails. So to quickly wrap things up, first you need a founder with credibility in that field. Second, you need a concept that pops. Third, you need an activity-focused community platform. And fourth, you need to make sure that, And fourth, you need to be prompting newcomers to make a specific post. And finally, give members increasing level of skill, power, and make sure they're making friends within your online community. Because we have so short time to do the work that we're going to do, and it's the most incredible feeling in the world when you're able to take a group of people and connect them together around your organization. MozCon, it's always amazing to speak to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rich. Okay, when you were tweeting, when you were up here, people were tweeting all kinds of questions about platforms. So we're going to do a quick speed round.
Sure.
You mentioned Facebook, don't do Facebook. Very quickly, what are your thoughts on the following platforms? LinkedIn.
LinkedIn can work for some professional communities, but recently I haven't seen that many that are doing well.
Meetup.
Meetup is good. Meetup works very, very well for communities that like to meet up in person. It seems to be a company that's going well. Yeah, that's a good one. I like
I'll group these together if I can. Slack and HipChat.
Slack is very interesting. It seems to be growing fast. I like Slack. Yammer should be very scared at the moment. The other one I haven't had much experience with, HipChat.
Rand had an interesting question. What would you have advised Reddit do with their recent community kerfuffle? Would you have any advice to them on that?
You know, with Reddit, it's one of those really unfortunate things, and I think everyone has a different opinion on it. My opinion is that it's a bad idea to have only one person responsible for that community. I mean, you need to have more than one person responsible. But I also think when someone does stand up and does try to tackle the abuse that's happening in that site, we need to support them. Everyone in that organization should have been supporting her, not being strangely quiet. But I think right now it's a little late for them to be doing that. I think the key thing is just to make sure that they have more than one person responsible, that the lines of communication are pretty clear. But also there are times where you just have to take a stand. You have to take a stand saying, we are not going to tolerate this in our community any longer. And there's going to be people that don't like that, but I think that's just what happens in communities sometimes. Thanks, Jen.
Well said. For people who saw you last year, you touched on this a little bit last year, but a lot of people in the audience are wondering about how to sell community, how to sell investment. Wondering, Linda Hodgeness was asking about organic visits or new customers. For those people who are interested in learning more about the ROI of community, where can they get started?
If you don't mind me doing a plug, if you go to feverbee.com/ROI PDF, I think the ROI is in capital letters, that should work. If not, I'll just tweet it out right after this.
Sounds good. Excellent as always. Thank you, Rich Millington.
Thank you so much. Woo!